All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversation from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughan, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement at www.togetherindigital.com. Today, we are talking about productivity. And I think it's fair to say that we all have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. Amidst burnout, overwork, and workplace stress, sometimes it's hard to imagine that there is a healthy side to productivity, but there is. And today we are here with Tanya Dalton, who is going to help you learn how to truly be productive. Tanya is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, and renowned productivity expert specializing in purposeful leadership. I love all these things, Tanya. I'm so excited you're here. Her impactful work has garnered international recognition with books translated to networks like NBC and Fox, and a VIP contributor of entrepreneur.com and forbes.com. Tanya is widely regarded as a thought leader in purposeful productivity and leadership. She is the founder of Inkwell Press Productivity Co. and is a highly successful company that provides tools designed to optimize success. And you're hearing this right, by doing less. Again, all the more reasons to be excited to have you here with us today, Tanya. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, let's get into some questions. And then, of course, as always, we love having our live listening audience here with us. If you have questions, please add them to the chat. Let us know what you want to know. If there's something we don't hit on, we're here for you. We want to know what you need to hear, what questions that you have. But we're going to start with my questions. So, Tanya, let's go wait for it. That last part, obviously, hopefully perked everybody else's ears up. I know it perked my ears up. This idea of, being a founder is incredibly exciting. You created Inkwell Press Productivity Co. What inspired you to create tools and systems to optimize success? Again, like I said, that part that perked my ears up, by doing less. What inspired you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think we often create tools and trainings and education because we need it, right? I had started my first business back in 2008 and had run that whole rat race of trying to do all the things, wearing all the hats all at the same time, doing 5 million things, spinning my wheels, checking 1,000 things off my to-do list, but slipping into bed at night thinking, oh, why didn't I get more done? Or why haven't I done more, right? Even though I was busy all day long, even though I checked 1,000 things off that to-do list. And it's one of those things where I began to really realize it's not about doing more. True productivity is not about doing more. It's doing what's most important and cutting through that clutter and the noise to get really clear on what matters most. So I found that when I started doing that, everything became easier. And I had so much more time on my hands while my business was thriving. So I eventually closed up that first business, opened up Inkwell Press Productivity Co. I scaled that to 7 figures in 18 months. And I only had 3 employees. Me, my husband, John, who's worked for me since 2009, and a part-time employee. So the thing is we often believe we have to have giant teams or we have to have giant stacks of money in order to make it. And it's not about that. It's really lasering in, getting really clear on what it is you want to do, why you're doing it, and then making it happen.
Yes. And I think too, I was just attending Black Tech Week here in Cincinnati, where we were talking to a lot of founders, and the hustle culture is still very much there and real. I love your story because you built a business of 7 figures without burning yourself out. And I think that's still a bit of a notion that we've had trouble moving past. So it makes me super excited, especially as an entrepreneur with limited resources, to know that, hey, productivity can actually help me and my business succeed without me falling down dead from exhaustion.
Well, I mean, I think most of us go into starting our own business, not because we think I want to kill myself working 80, 90 hours a week. We do it for the freedoms, the lifestyle freedom, the time freedom, the financial freedom, the location free, all those freedoms. And then we find ourselves tethered to our desks or to our phones, and we're working And yes, it's nice that you can work anywhere, but you don't want to be working while your kid's playing soccer on the field or while you're on your beach vacation. So it really is about, what is this lifestyle you want? Because your business is not the end goal. Your business is just a vehicle to get you to that life you want.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And I think another, interesting kind of approach and take that you have on productivity that I find so exciting is that it's focused on purpose as well. So you've been recognized as a thought leader on purposeful productivity and leadership. Can you tell us more about how purpose plays a critical role in actually making us more productive? Because it kind of seems like, oh, if I have a purpose, I have to give up all my time and energy. Sounds like not so.
Well, here's the thing, is that purpose should be driving your productivity. You need to ask yourself that question, why? Why am I doing this, with pretty much everything that you're doing? Because a lot of times we're answering that question of why am I doing it? It's because I think I should be doing this, or I'm looking around at what everybody else is doing, and I think I should do that as well, right?
Yes.
And what I really believe is, if you understand your purpose, your mission, your vision, your core values, where it is you want to go, you can work backwards to get really clear on what goals to set, what initiatives you want to create for yourself. And that allows you to really prioritize the important tasks. And it also gives you permission to get rid of the other things that really aren't tied to that bigger vision of who you are and what you want to do. So it really does go hand in hand, this idea of not just doing things, but understanding why we're doing this. And I think this is so important, not just for you as a founder or a CEO or a business leader, it's also so important for your team. I truly believe burnout is not caused by overwork. It's by not finding meaning in your work. And when you connect the meaning of your work with the tasks that you and your team members are doing, not only does that feel more aligned, but it feels good inside. We begin to see, oh, this work I do matters. And when we understand the work we do matters, our motivation increases, which increases our momentum, and that gets us moving to where we want to go.
Yeah. And takes you back to not going to bed at night thinking I was busy all day. I did a million things. And why do I feel like I got nothing done? It's because, like you're saying, you're missing that purpose. You're lacking that purpose. So aligned with this. We're going to have to make your book as a recommended or required read for our goal getters group, because we do focus, like we do it's a members thing where once a year we get together and at the beginning of the year, and then we meet quarterly and we talk about what are your values, because we don't want people to be doing the shoulds, we say, don't should all over yourself.
Yep. We should on ourselves all the time. Mm-hmm.
Right. Because we think, especially I think as women, that doing is leading. We think that we have to be able to do all of the work, soup to nuts, top to bottom, and that's how we're leaders. It's like, no, sometimes it is kind of knowing how to motivate, orchestrate, get other people, delegate, all these other things in order to kind of find that ability to take a look back at the end of the day and say, I got some important shit done. I made something that mattered.
Absolutely. And I think that's the mistake we make. We get caught up in the quantity. I need to do a lot of tasks versus the quality. Oftentimes it's 3 to 5 things that have meaning in your day that will help you go to bed at night and feel satisfied and successful versus trying to do 50 things. A lot of times I'll say to people, okay, imagine I say, I want you to take some steps, right? Let's say 50 steps. You can go in 50 different directions. You forward, backwards, diagonal, behind you, to the side. Where are you going to end up after 50 steps? Who knows? Maybe in the same spot, maybe further behind, maybe lost at that point. But if instead I said, okay, 5 steps, just 5 steps in that same forward direction, where are you going to end up? Closer to where you want to go. So it's not about the number of things. Right. And the problem is, a lot of times we look at our to-do list and we just love checking things off. Our brain loves that dopamine hit we get when we check something off. It feels really good, right? Yep. Sometimes we write things down just to check them off. And that's that dopamine that's coming in, right? Yep. But if we're doing that, what's happening is our brain is training us to go for the easy wins, the easy things to check off. And a lot of times the things that are truly going to be an investment in our future, the things that are going to move the needle, are the bigger tasks, the tasks that take a little bit longer or that require a little more thinking.
Yeah.
So shifting that helps. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me too, a part of what we do in the workshop is learn our productivity style. And I want to share, because I feel like some of you might feel seen, and maybe you've read and seen some of this as well, Tanya. But I learned that I have to what's called Eat the Frog. And the idea, it's a Mark Twain quote, that the first thing you should do in the morning is eat the frog. In other words, do the thing that is the hardest, most unpleasant thing that you have to do in your day. Because if you're this kind of person, you will take care of every single teeny tiny little tasks that is either there or comes your way in order to avoid the thing that you just don't want to do. And learning that insight was super helpful for me. I was like, oh, I'm in an industry where busy is a badge of honor, so I'm motivated in that way, but then and then like dopamine, you said, but then on top of that, my productivity style is save the hardest thing, the most challenging thing, in my case, the most confrontational thing, likely for last. So things just don't move. You've got some frameworks. I've mentioned a couple frameworks. We love frameworks and actionable takeaways. So your book is full of them. And one of them that you talk about is the concept of cathedral thinking, and how it can transform goal discovery and productivity. Tell us more.
Yeah. So this idea of cathedral thinking, it stems back, and it comes from this concept that back in the 1100s, the 1200s, a long, long time ago, the city architects and planners, the builders, they had these beautiful cathedrals that they built. It was this beautiful vision of where they wanted to go. Now, what's amazing is those cathedrals are still standing today. But those cathedrals they took more than a lifetime. The Duomo in Florence took 500 years to build. So it's so much bigger than you and your lifetime. It's really looking out past today into a future of where it is I want to go. And that becomes this beautiful landmark for us to move towards. So I love this idea of looking out past today, finding this vision of where you want to go. But that can feel really, really daunting, because it feels like, I don't know who I am right now, and this place I want to go to are really far apart. There's like a giant chasm the size of the Grand Canyon between them. So we can back that timeline up. So I want you to imagine a timeline, like channel your inner second grader, right? Where you have the little dot that says you are here today and here's where you want to go. So at the end of that, we have your cathedral, which is your potential. This is where you want to go in the next, let's say 10, 20 years. So pretty far off in the future, really too far away to really believe it's going to happen. So let's back that timeline up. Let's get it a little bit closer. Okay, if this is your potential in 10 to 20 years, all right, what is possible in 3 to 5 years on that timeline that gets you closer to that cathedral? Okay, so that gets us a little bit closer, but still pretty far away. All right, if that's my potential, and then what's possible is 3 to 5 years, let's back it up. What's practical? What can I do in the next 12 to 18 months? What can I actually accomplish on that timeline to get me to that cathedral? All right, we're making some progress. We're getting a little closer, right? All right. If that's what's practical in the next 12 to 18 months, what do I need to prioritize in the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next 9 months? Those priorities, those are your goals. Those are the things that you need to accomplish to get you to that cathedral, to get you to that vision that feels really far away. You're moving closer and closer and closer. And that's how we make sure that our goals are aligned with what we want. You know, in speaking to business owners, a lot of times I tell them your cathedral is going to be very different from anybody else's. And that means your goals are going to be different. Let's say that you are growing a business so that you can sell in 10 years. Okay, what you want to prioritize now is vastly different than what somebody wants to do if they want to grow something that's like an Amazon, right? Like a 9-10 figure business. It's going to be vastly different. Or maybe you want to run your business and then step out and bring in somebody else as CEO. Understanding where you want to go, that allows us to back that timeline up and make sure the goals are getting us where we want to go. So often we set goals because we're like, I'm not really sure what to do, but this is what everybody else is doing, so I should do that too. So there we are, shoulding on ourselves, right? Which is our red flag word that we need to stop and say, wait, why am I doing this? So instead, when we use that timeline of potential, then possible, then practical, and then prioritize, that allows us to really set goals that get us to that beautiful vision of what we want our tomorrow to look like. Not what anybody else wants their tomorrow to look like, what you want it to look like.
I love that so much, because like you said, it's like we are a very goal first kind of mindset, culture and anxiety. And so it is just about, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and I want it to be smart. So, but then it's like, but what at the end of all of it, what do you really want? I really, really love that thinking. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And then you've got another framework. I know you have a number, but another one I was intrigued by was the impact goals framework. Could you talk us through some of the key principles and steps involved in achieving and taking, now that we have our cathedral in mind, those impactful goals?
Yes, I like that question. And you said, we want to do things that are smart, and SMART goals are one of the frameworks that people have used. The SMART goal framework is a good framework, but it hasn't been updated since the 1980s. I taught the SMART framework for a long time, and I began to realize I was constantly twisting it and turning it, making it actually work for the modern world and how we do things. So I kind of borrowed from the SMART framework to create this impact framework. So there's a little, hat tip to the SMART framework. But just like the SMART framework, where each letter stands for something, the impact framework does too. So the I in impact is inspirational. It needs to inspire you. Let's be honest. If you're setting a goal and you're like, I don't really want to do this,
right?
Probably not really aligned with the cathedral, right? So let's not do things unless we find it inspiring because we think this is what we want to do. So that's our I. So when we're writing out our goals, we want to make sure that we are writing them in a way that is inspirational. You also want to write them out in a positive way, right? We've all heard that you don't say, hey, I want to quit smoking. It's, I am now a non-smoker, right? Really start thinking about what it is you want. So that's our I in impact. M is measurable. They need to be measured. Anything that you can measure, you want to, because anytime we set goals, if you don't make them measurable, you don't know when you're going to achieve them, right? So we want to make sure that we are measuring them. So we'll get back to the M because that's an important part of the framework. Let's go to P though, because P stands for purpose driven. Just like we talked about with that cathedral, we want to make sure that our goals are tied to that bright, beautiful vision that we have for ourselves. It needs to be driven by what that purpose is. So we've done inspirational, measurable, purpose driven. Then we get to the A. Okay. So A and C kind of go together. They need to be adaptable, but they also need to be challenging. So we want to challenge ourselves and push ourselves out of our comfort zone, but we need to make sure that they're measurable. We want to make sure that they're adaptable. So earlier we talked about that idea that we want to be able to measure our goals. The problem is a lot of times we use metrics to measure, like, let's say, for example, losing weight, right? That's a goal that a lot of people set. And they'll say, oh, I want to lose 15 pounds. Okay, well, if it's really inspirational and it's really purpose driven, it's probably really not about the 15 pounds. It's about living a healthier lifestyle long term. So let's not focus in on the number of pounds you're going to lose. Let's focus in on how many times you're going to exercise or move your body this week, or how many times you're going to eat healthy meals this week. Let's take the healthy meals, for example. So now our measurable goal could be, okay, I want to eat healthier meals, right? But let's make them adaptable but challenging. If you're not eating healthy meals at all, and you say, okay, now I'm going to eat 7 meals a week that are totally healthy, chances are it's not going to work out. Things are going to go, you're going to slide a little bit. And then we have a tendency when things don't work out, we just say, goal is done, failed, didn't do it, can never achieve it, right? So let's instead choose to make our goal challenging to push us out of our comfort zone, but also adaptable. So one of my favorite ways to do this is to use the word average. So when we're measuring it, let's say I'm going to eat healthy an average of 3 times a week. Now, what that word average does is it allows us that flexibility and grace for life to happen. Sometimes you're on the road because you're traveling for work and all there is to eat is unhealthy food on the road, right? So that way, okay, maybe you have a week where you're not really eating healthy. So the next week you're like, okay, last week I only ate 1 healthy meal. This week I'm going to make sure to eat 5. That way we can get to that average number. So that gives us the grace, that flexibility that really our lives require in this day and age. So again, we're challenging ourselves. We're not saying we're only going to eat healthy 1 day a week. We're pushing ourselves while still making it adaptable. And then our T is, of course, timed, because goals need a deadline. And you might say to yourself, okay, but eating healthy, that shouldn't have a deadline, right? Like we don't want to stop eating healthy. That's true. But we want to stop and have a check-in point, a point where we go, okay, this is my deadline to do a check-in. How am I doing with eating healthy an average of 4 times a week? Okay, maybe I didn't do so well, so I'm going to change it. I'm going to shift that goal and shift it to making it an average of 3 times a week. Or hey, maybe I'm knocking it out of the park. Let's move the average up to 5 days a week. Having that deadline also gives us time, not just to make those adjustments, but also to celebrate. hey, I did it. Look how I did, right? I think so often we're on this like steep hill of life and we're like, whew, I am tired. My legs are burning. I can't do it. But if you stop and you look back at where you've been, you think, wow, I
Mhm.
really came pretty far. And you get this amazing second win that says, I came this far. I can keep going, right? And that's what a deadline does for you. It allows you to stop, look at where you've been, celebrate, adjust, change, possibly throw out. Some
Yeah.
of those goals you set for yourself, it's okay to say, yeah, that doesn't really fit anymore. That's not who I want to be. That's okay. But having that point in time to stop and do a check-in, so important. So that's the impact framework: inspirational, measurable, purpose-driven, adaptable and challenging, and then also timed.
And I love the addition of just finding a way to give yourself grace. It's so important. It's why so many people give up and don't continue. So grace and celebration, I think, are two of the biggest keys to keeping you moving forward in your goals, because it can get hard because you have competing goals and priorities. And that's my next question is, for a lot of folks, they struggle kind of balancing personal and professional priorities. How can individuals uncover what truly matters to them and nurture their personal goals as well as maybe even professional goals when they are so busy? How do we begin to balance those goals and set those
Yeah.
goals?
Well, first of all, I would say stop trying to balance, because
Mm,
that balance does not exist. And honestly, if we ask ourselves, we don't really want balance.
mm,
You don't want balance because if you're balanced, everything is perfectly even. And that's the mistake that we look at. We look at our days and we're like, oh, I got to spend equal amounts of time and I got to do that's hard, right? That's a tightrope and it's very easy to fall off. We actually want to lean into our priorities. And this is the thing, is to make a difference in your business or in your personal life or in your health or any of those things. It means devoting more time, more energy, more focus into that area, which means going out of balance. It's
mm.
just like riding a bike.
Yeah.
So we think of riding a bike as being perfectly balanced, and it is if you're going on a straight path and you're not going any direction whatsoever other than just straight. But if you want to turn left, you have to lean to the left. You have to go out of balance. Now you can't stay leaned over too far. You'll fall over, right? Or if you stay there too long, you have to then counterbalance and right yourself. And then you might lean to the right and turn to the right. So we have these different seasons in our lives where we want to focus in on work, and we'll lean more heavily into work, and we'll pick up a little bit and not lean so heavily into our home compartment, our work, our personal life. And then we counterbalance. And then it's like, oh, I want to run a marathon. Okay, we're going to lean more heavily into our health and our workouts and those types of things, which means, hey, we can't go after big initiatives at the same time in work. So let's pick up that pedal a little bit there on work, and then let's counterbalance. And it's this beautiful harmony of leaning and counterbalancing. That's what allows us to really go the direction we want to go in. Because truly, we talked about having a cathedral, but we have cathedrals for work. We have cathedrals for our home life. We have cathedrals for our relationships. There's so much more to you than just who you are as a business owner or as a manager or as a leader. There's so many more aspects for you. So you're going to have multiple cathedrals, and each one needs to have a little bit of time. So lean into that and then counterbalance.
I love it. That's great. Well, so outside of this constant pursuit and idea of balance, what are some other pitfalls that others should try to avoid? And what strategies do you recommend for those who kind of fall into these productivity pitfalls?
Yeah. So there's so many like productivity hacks and tricks. And I'm not one who likes hacks and tricks because I like things that really work for you. And I think one of the big mistakes people make is they feel like there's a magic button, right? Oh, if I just could be productive, what are the 3 things I need to do to be productive? And this is oftentimes the problem, is that we start with that productivity system in the center, and then we try to bend and twist and contort our life to work the system that doesn't really work for us. And then we wonder what's wrong with us. It's not us, it's the system didn't work.
Really?
So instead, I really encourage people to start with, all right, put you in the middle. You are the main thing. Let's think about, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is it you want? Your cathedrals, right? And then let's wrap the system around you. And I talk a lot about that in my books, The Joy of Missing Out, as well as On Purpose, because I think it's so important to customize it and really personalize what you're doing. So that's the first thing I would say, is feeling like there's a magic button that if I just press this button, that's going to be it.
Right.
Let's stop and assess, where is it you want to go? What's your cathedral? What are my strengths? What comes really easy to me? And what's hard? It's okay to have weaknesses, because guess what? We've all got them. We all have weaknesses. I know for me, I have certain things that are a weakness. So I make sure that I do things to mitigate those weaknesses. So here's an example that's kind of a random example, but in the bathroom, I'm not very good about hanging up towels. Like, that's just not my thing. And they end up on the floor. I threw out all my towel bars and I put up hooks. I put up hooks for my kids because I will pop it on a hook. I'm not going to fold the towel and put it on the wrap. Oh my God, that's so simple. But now there's no towels on my floor. So that's just like a really easy example. But think about what your weaknesses are and then work towards those.
Right. I love that advice. I think that's why I liked the productivity style, like understanding like how I work, because again, like you said, not everybody's motivated the same way. Not everybody works the same way. And it's just, you go into it so mindlessly. And I honestly think that the bathroom towel example is genius. It's perfect because it's so simple, but it does go to show you, just with the way that our minds work and work differently, certain little obstacles, whether we see them or not, changing and removing that obstacle all of a sudden makes something that seems so challenging very seamless. So
much easier, right? But then somebody else is like, I love folding the towel. So if I said everybody has to throw out their towel bar, everybody listening to this has to, somebody be like, but I like that. And hey, if you like it, keep your towel bar. But if you just heard this and we're like, holy, wait a minute, I don't have to have a towel bar. Yeah, head yourself down to the hardware store and get a couple of hooks. Exactly. It's life-changing. And that's the thing. It's really, I like to say what I teach is small, huge movements, simple to implement, easy to manage, but monumental in the impact it can make on your daily life. A lot of times it's just these little small things that are really easy to implement. And that's the thing, like with all these productivity, like giant systems that we try to plug in, they're complicated. Who has time for that? Let's really make it work for you. Small, easy to manage, so it can change your life.
I love it. I love it. Because we are really good at getting in our own way as well.
Yes, we are. We love to overcomplicate things.
Right? Exactly. Let's work smarter, not harder, folks.
Yes.
I love it. So obviously, I mean, it's so good to have you here today, and all this advice has been so amazing to hear. And it's such good frameworks. You're a busy entrepreneur, best-selling author, very busy and renowned speaker. You manage a lot of responsibilities. We haven't talked about your personal life really. So I'm curious.
I do have one. Yes.
Right. I'm sure you do. I sure hope so. How do you maintain productivity and focus amidst being, it sounds like, in a lot of different places?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing is, it's really easy to get caught up in doing all the things. And we touched on this idea before, where a lot of times we find our value in the doing. I have to do enough to earn my value. And that's not true, right? So that's the first thing, is kind of walking away from some of that, but also really creating these strong boundaries for yourself, I think was really revolutionary for me. I truly believe that your business is the vehicle for the life you want. And I know the life that I want isn't ignoring my kids while they're, doing things, or, spending hours on end. I know that for me, setting a strong boundary allows me to put on my CEO hat, take that off, and then put on my CEO of the home hat, because I'm the CEO of the house, right? With the kids and all those things happening. So I have created schedules for myself that really work for me. So I work Monday through Thursdays, very rarely work on Fridays. It has to be something I'm super passionate and excited about that I don't really count as work for me to work on a Friday. I leave work every day at 3:00 to be home with my kids. And I have done that for years. It is revolutionary in making sure that I am adequately spending time. We talked about that whole idea with the bike of leaning and counterbalancing. I want to give the best version of me to my kids, to my husband, to my friends, to my family members. And what I was finding was, when I wasn't creating these strong boundaries for myself, they were getting the leftovers. They were getting the dregs. And the whole reason I started the business was so that I could create this life for our family, right? I wanted that lifestyle freedom. And when I wasn't doing that, I could have very easily told myself a story of like, oh, I'm the world's worst mom. I did have a moment of work where I was working. There's a whole story behind it. And I got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst mom. I'm the worst mom ever. And this is why I think it's so important to have these deadlines. So I literally have a check-in on my calendar. At the end of each month, I do a mini check-in, but each quarter I spend a half day doing a check-in. So it's on my calendar. I do the check-in. I've just come through this crazy season where everything that could have gone wrong was wrong. I was working insane hours, and I thought, I'm the world's worst mom. I'm a terrible mother. And I could have just said, well, I guess that's the end of that. I'm just the world's worst mother. But instead I said, okay, do I like where I am? Do I like what I'm doing? What do I need to shift or change? And it was because I stopped and I asked those questions of why, what's the purpose behind this? Why am I doing this? That then I was like, you know what? I need to put in better boundaries. And then that's when I decided I was going to do Monday through Thursday till 3:00 and Fridays off. If you had told me previously that I would be able to do that, I would have said, that's crazy. But telling myself, wow, that was a really rough season. I'm a terrible mom because of that season. That gave me the ability to push against that. And that's the thing is, there's lots of things we regret. This is why we don't like reflection a lot of times, because it feels bad. There are things we don't like that we did. There's failures we've made. There's mistakes that have happened. We've had bad hires, all kinds of things. But when we stop and acknowledge that, just like we acknowledge our weaknesses, we can push against that and build our resilience. So I pushed against this idea of, gosh, I'm working so many hours, my kids are not really seeing me, or they're spending all their time at the warehouse with me versus going on play dates. I pushed against that to build this resilience of, I'm not doing that again. Yes. And that almost gave me permission to be hard and fast with my boundaries. And then I've kept that long term because it was so revolutionary and life-changing.
I mean, it is true. If you don't respect your time, nobody else will. And if you kind of set these as like right away, don't wait to set those boundaries. If you're coming into a new job, if you're not an entrepreneur, solopreneur, and you don't have maybe that autonomy, flexibility, it's so easy. And I would even say freelancers. I mean, it's like when you're serving clients, it's so hard. You want to always be available. But if you kind of set expectations from the start, and like I control my calendar with Calendly. I'll make a free plug-in promotion for them. I love it because I can create a number of calendars, which means I have the themed days, where days that I won't take meetings, days that I will take meetings, the hours and afternoons for member one-on-ones for onboarding. And people are like, how do you have time, Amy, to be meeting with all these new members? And I'm like, I make time for it. It's literally on my calendar. And if I don't have any scheduled, I get other work done. But really kind of looking at your calendar and seeing how you can work through and own your time and create those boundaries. Again, I think just sometimes putting it on paper or in a calendar can be pretty life-changing.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is, this whole idea of how much time we're spending on things. And especially for those of you who feel like, well, I can't, but good for you that you don't have to work on Fridays because you own your own business. I work for someone else. I recently did an Oxford talk called Time Management is Killing Your Productivity. And it's all about how the 40-hour work week is so antiquated. This whole concept and idea of sitting in our seats for 40 hours a week, it's based off of the Industrial Revolution. And really the 40-hour work week comes from Henry Ford over 100 years ago. So now in the day of AI and technology and being able to remote work, we are still setting our 40-hour work week based off a factory. So it's time for that to shift and change. And if you're working for someone who is, hey, we got to work these 40-hour weeks, tell them to go watch my Oxford talk. It's like over 100,000 views. TanyaDalton.com/Oxford. I can't tell you the number of businesses that have reached out to me and said, this has totally shifted how I run my business, how I have expectations for my team, just off of that 10-minute talk that I did.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners are going to be looking that up and sending that to bosses. I mean, I hear a lot about people like back to butts and seats in the office. And it's just, I think helping leaders and business owners understand that profitability and productivity aren't going to be lost just because people are sitting around at the office. By actually providing autonomy, flexibility, and things like that, they can actually be more productive in the windows of time, which are more accustomed to who they are and how they work well. So you're maximizing the productivity versus just having people sitting there.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is we're measuring productivity based off of time. And time
Right.
is not a good measurement. Again, we're focusing in on the quantity versus the quality. So
Great
if we
point.
shift from time focused to
Mhm.
quality focused to task focused, which, by the way, is how we as humans operated for hundreds of thousands of years. We were task focused. We had a harmonious relationship with time. We worked longer hours in the summer when the sun was up longer, and we worked shorter times in the winter. We had periods and seasons of rest and renewal, just like the seasons in nature. I mean, think about Laura Ingalls Wilder. They weren't
Yeah.
staying up till 11 o'clock at night checking email. They went to bed when the sun went down, right? And
Right.
that's how we as humans operated.
Yeah.
And then we decided with the Industrial Revolution to shift all that, to push against hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. And then we wonder why we're stressed. We wonder why we're burned out.
Right.
It's because, right? It's because we're not really living with those cycles that our body naturally craves.
Such amazing points. Fantastic. All right, we've got a little bit of time left, but I want to let our live listening audience know that we will have time at the end for questions. So feel free to add them to the chat. Tanya, can you share a real life example of someone who transformed their productivity and leadership skills by implementing some of the principles that you've taught?
Yeah, I can give you a lot of examples.
I know. I have to pick one.
I'll focus in on, one of the things that, for many of the people I work with is delegation is revolutionary. And we hear that we should delegate, but most people don't do it well, or they don't do it in a way that's really going to help them out. What happens is we delegate the task and then we're like, well, this isn't what I wanted. I just have to do it myself. Right. And we take all the tasks back. And hey, we do this at work and we do this at home. How come I'm the only one who knows how to load the dishwasher? Right. How come I'm the only one who knows how to do this ad copy? How come I'm the only one? And we take it back because we think no one else can do it as well as we can.
Mhm.
So the first thing is, let's let go of that idea and that concept of no one else can do it as well as me, because 80% done well by someone else is better than 100% done perfectly by you. Okay. So that's one of the things, conversations I have with people is let's let go of these really rigid ideas of what this has to be. But let's also make sure we're not abdicating. A lot of people mistake abdication for delegation. They pass you in the hallway and they're like, oh, hey, you know what? This is what I need done. Go do it. And then they turn that work into us and we're like, this isn't what I wanted. So they don't take the time to set that success measurement. And I think that's really important for ourselves, but also when we're delegating, what does success look like? Really making sure you're taking just a few minutes with delegation to map out, this is what this needs to look like. So I have frameworks. Obviously, I love frameworks. I know you do too. I have frameworks that I walk people through of how do you make sure your delegation is really clear? How do you make sure that they know it's aligned with where you go? And so when I walked CEOs and managers through this delegation process, which is part of a much bigger, system that I teach them, I can't tell you how much that changes people's lives. They're like, oh my gosh, I have so much more free time. And people are turning in work to me that have totally changed what I'm doing. I work with people who, have gone from working 70, 80 hours a week to now working 30 hours a week. I do that myself, but I've taught people how to do that time and time again. And they say, I didn't think a personal life was possible. I thought during this season of my career, it was go, 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 push, push, push. And here I am with not having to work all the time or not feeling chained to my desk. And this is true whether you're an entrepreneur or you're, working for a company or a corporation where you get the important work done, you delegate out. It really shifts your relationships with the people who matter most, your family members, because then they get the best version of you. So that's one of the things I do a lot of times with business leaders and managers is we create this so that it becomes an easier system that's well communicated. And then they're off and running and they're just like, this has shifted everything for me.
I can only imagine. I think I can totally see how delegation mastery would make things so much more different in our lives, because you're right. Like, we have a working peer moms group that meets every so often. And one of our members who is actually listening with us right now, made us aware of the term weaponized incompetence when it comes to our partners sometimes and the things that they don't want to do. But then it's like, how can we be more responsible? How can we hold them accountable? How can we help them understand that, this is how I would like to see it done. This is how I would normally go about doing it. You can find your own way, but this is the outcome I expect. Having that language and skill set, I don't think it's anything that we teach anywhere. So I love that you have frameworks for it. And I do think it could probably help us, some of us that are battling the weaponized incompetence at home. And we're the only ones that'll do certain things because it doesn't get done right otherwise.
This is the thing that I think is really interesting is, a lot of people, when they talk about productivity, we do focus mostly at work, but everything you're doing at work really does apply at home. The meetings that you're holding, I'm a big advocate for team meetings for my family. We do those on Sundays where we meet and we collaborate and we talk about how we're all working together. We delegate things at home. Most of what we're doing at work, there's a different version of it that happens at home. I like to say we can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, but if the kitchen is burning down around us, it does us no good. We want to have a good, productive home life that gives us that stability to go and lean into work, be 100% all in at work, then counterbalance and be 100% all in at home. So everything I'm talking about here, you heard me mention bathroom hooks. We can talk about, all kinds of things, how I automated laundry. I have not done laundry. I have not done a single load of laundry since my kids were 10 years old. Not a single load because I delegated that out.
Yeah. I was going to say my husband does all the laundry now too. It kind of like started with the baby. I'm like, I can't do laundry right now. And he just kept doing it. I'm like, you know what? This is kind of your thing now. You're better at it. This works.
Absolutely. You're good at this. Take it and run.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's like shared responsibilities, again, leaning into each other's strengths, whether you're at work or at home, it's absolutely a great opportunity to help everybody feel like they're being purposeful, right? And they're being productive.
Well, if you think about it, that's what a team is. A team works together. A team is not one person holding everyone else up. So, just now I alluded to the fact that we have these team meetings with my family. So I have 2 kids and a husband and a dog and a cat and a hedgehog and, all those things. So we have these team meetings on Sundays. And so I sit down, and I've done this since my kids were really little. We sit down and we talk about, what do you have going on? What are your priorities for the week? What you have a book report due, you have soccer practice, you've got play practice, right? They tell me their priorities and what's going on. I tell them mine. And then when, let's say my son is having a crazy week because he's got 5 million things going on, we as a team say, okay, Jack normally does these things. How can we all pitch in and help him?
Yeah.
And we also say, hey, mom's got a big launch coming up. She's got a big thing going on. How are you guys going to step in and help me? Asking your kids for support is a way for them to feel like they're a part of the team, not just that life happens to them, but they're an active member and participant. That team mentality is everything when it comes to your family. Those are the threads that bond us together. That's so important. And I think especially as moms, we feel like we have to hold everybody else up. We're the cruise director. We have to do it all. And the truth is, when you let others step in, that helps them. That builds their resilience. It also builds their self-esteem. My kids love it when I ask them for help. Makes them feel so important, right?
Right. Yeah. Mama's got needs too. I love that. And my kids are the same way. Like, they're very hardwired to be helpers. So it is always awesome as they get older to let them show up for you, because then you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm doing a good job because they're here. They're able to anticipate needs even before I ask for them. But Tanya, we might be starting to have team meetings on Sundays. That's a brilliant idea. I love it.
I tell you, I have a video where I can share that with your people if you'd like, on YouTube, that walks you through what that looks like and how we do it. My son is now 20. He's in college, and he is so happy and productive with his life because we've given him the tools all along. I think that's really one of the other side benefits is we're secretly training our kids to be adults as we're doing these things. Yeah.
Right. Turn out a little bit better than we did even. I love it.
I know, right?
That's so great. All right. I've got one more question. I haven't seen any questions come through the chat. We did put all of Tanya's links so you can connect with her, follow her, listen to her talks, get her books, all in the chat. We will include those in the show notes. So the last question that I have for you, Tanya, is, we've touched on it a little bit when we talked about adaptable and your impact framework. We all kind of experience setbacks on our productivity journey. How can we stay motivated and resilient when we encounter obstacles in our path?
Well, the one thing you can plan on is that the perfect plan will not work out because there's going to be obstacles. So this is why, and we touched a little bit on this earlier when I said I regularly put it in there to stop and check in and do an assessment. I do it with my goals, but I also just do it in life where I stop each quarter. I have it in my calendar. It's a half day where I just stop and I ask myself some questions. But I have, again, another framework that I call the 3 A's, where sometimes we're moving along, right, in this super highway of life, and we're going 85 miles an hour. Speed limit is 60, but we're still going 85. And all of a sudden we look down and we go, whoa, I'm not on the highway. Like, where am I? What happened? So the first A is to acknowledge, okay, where am I right now? What does this look like? This is not an opportunity to beat yourself up or say, oh gosh, nothing ever works. It's just, where am I? Acknowledge it. Take a minute if you need to be like, wow, I really am not where I thought I'd be. Acknowledge. Then we're going to do the second A, which is assess. Hey, do I like where I am? Sometimes we get off that super highway and we're on this scenic route and we think, oh my God, this is so much better. Or I didn't even know this existed. I think I like this better. Or you might say, you know what? I don't like where I am. I want to get back on that highway where I was, right? So that's our second A, is to assess. So our third A is, okay, let's adjust. All right, maybe we need to throw out that old plan because we like this scenic route. We like where we are, and we're going to shift and create new goals and new visions of where we want to go. Or I want to go back. I need to make some adjustments to how I've been doing this. Maybe I need to set up some new habits for myself or make some shifts in my morning routine. So taking just a few minutes, honestly, to acknowledge, assess, and then adjust, that allows you to constantly do this check-in as you're moving towards that cathedral to make sure that you're staying on that path or you're changing that cathedral out. Both of them are great options. It just depends on what you want and what you desire.
But like you said, the important part is actually slowing down. I think sometimes you're right. We just have this urgency to keep going 85 miles an hour, even though we're lost. I feel like I'll just get there.
Driving in circles, doing U-turns. Yeah.
Take the wheel. This has been amazing, Tanya. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to dig into more of your content material. Again, love your frameworks, love the connection of purpose and productivity. They're two things I'm also very passionate about. I know a lot of our listeners are, so I know they're just going to eat up all of this amazing stuff. I've got a ton of notes here as well. So again, thank you so much for your time and your energy and just giving us all these amazing frameworks. I love it.
Absolutely. I'm so passionate about what I do. I love talking about it. I just want other people to feel just as passionate about what they get to do and how they get to live. So Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, Tanya. Thanks again, everyone. Have a fabulous weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye.